listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
And welcome to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz on this Monday edition. Geoff, great to have you back this week, my friend. We're getting closer and closer to maybe your favorite time of the year before we get to camps and the like. Did you enjoy that as a player?
Well, so it's interesting. You do those again. I mentioned many times on this show, other programs. You find me on social media at Geoff Schwartz, Geoff with a G. I like the offseason program because I thought and still do believe it's a great time for camaraderie with your teammates. It's no stress, right? No one's getting released. Maybe the back end of the roster for some oddities are getting released, but the time that you play golf with your friends, right? You go to dinners, like just a very stress-free environment to get to know your teammates and play a little football and get ready for the season. Then you typically get, let's say June 1st till the end of July. But July 4th was always the time that I felt was like, okay, like buckle down time, right? Like the 4th of July, you have your barbecues, you eat whatever you want. And then it's sort of like, my birthday is July 11th. So it was always like 4th of July, start buckling down, birthday, like 2 weeks away. And then training camp starts. And obviously it's a lot different feeling now. Teams don't go away as much. I played on 3 teams that went away. So I went away for the first 6 years of my career to training camp. And Carolina Panthers at Wofford. They're not Wofford anymore. Minnesota was at, I think, Minnesota State in Mankato. The Chiefs went to St. Joe's, and they still go to St. Joe's. So it's a little different vibe now that when you pack up your truck and drive somewhere for 2 weeks and have double days in the heat in Spartanburg, South Carolina. But you start feeling that in the summer. So right now, again, I think it's just fun right now, right? Like guys are enjoying their time with their teammates. There shouldn't be much stress. And you start feeling football come soon. I'll tell you what also makes you feel football. They just announced, as we're getting on the air, the cover for Madden for 2026. So like you're starting to feel, if you had to guess who's on the cover of Madden, Dave, we'll break the news to you.
Jaden Daniels.
No, Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley. Okay, it makes more sense.
So Saquon's on the cover. I think the Madden curse, by the way, is done, right? There's no more Madden curse. I don't think it's there anymore. I think we've gone over that now with players having good seasons the last couple of years. So the curse is done, thankfully. But when you start getting those announcements, right? Madden's coming back, NCAA is coming back. You start feeling like football's hot now in North Carolina. So it does feel like summer's here and football will be here very soon.
We're in June, my friend. So we're getting so close. Let's get to our off-season moves presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. Today and a Monday, sad day in Indianapolis, the memorial service for the former owner, Jim Ersce, who passed away very suddenly back on June 2nd. June 2nd is the memorial, rather, and passed away a week ago here. And now you look back at the players going to wear a patch in his honor this year, Geoff. And look, this is a beloved guy, not just obviously for the Colts, but in that city, that organization in Indianapolis. As a player, how do they go about the business of doing their job and still honoring the late owner now in the passing of Jim Ersce?
Well, owner involvement in teams is different from team to team. I played on teams where the owner, Jerry Richardson, Big Cat in North Carolina, Charlotte, his job was the Carolina Panthers. I played for the Vikings, and the Wolf family, they don't live in Minnesota. I think they live in New Jersey for most of the year. The Chiefs, right? The Hunt family lives in Texas. They fly in for the games. And I play for the Giants, and the Mara family, like that, their business is the National Football League. Like John Mara practice every day. Like he's watching practice. So you have different interactions with owners, and some I knew. Look, I was never a superstar really enough, besides the Giants, to know the ownership in a level that other superstars would. But there's a different level of knowing Mr. Richardson, who was in the building every day, and the Wolf family, right? So Ersce seemed like he was one of those owners that the players knew that he was in the building every day. He enjoyed being around the team, and I think the players will miss those interactions with ownership and with Jim Ersce. But I think that the most important thing that I want, like when I pass, is people to talk about me, and I think the way they're talking about Jim Ersce, right? Like people are sharing fond memories of him, right? Of being around him, of his mentorship, the fun things they did with him. And I think that's the way you want to be remembered. So I would imagine that the memorial service, I believe, is closed to the public, correct? There's going to be a time starting a public memorial for Mr. Ersce. It's going to be, I think where the players, I'm sure, share stories and reminiscing. And look, from all accounts, a good owner, right?
Yep.
I mean, they put resources into winning. They built a new stadium, obviously. They won a championship with Peyton Manning. They tried with Andrew Luck, and it hasn't really clicked since then. So all those things I think are positive for Jim Ersce. Yeah, look, the players have a job to do, just like everyone else. Like they're gonna do their job, but I'm sure that the players that have connections with Jim Ersce will miss those times they would normally see him, maybe during the week in passing, or maybe after games. Ownership tends to be in the locker room after games, give everyone handshakes, win or lose, and they'll probably miss those moments. But that's sort of where the intersection of ownership and players tend to cross.
Yeah, you're right. It's a small fraternity of players and even smaller of owners. Jim Ersce passing away at the age of 65 back on May 2nd. Stunning news there at Indianapolis. And again, they'll be wearing a ceremonial patch to remember Mr. Ersce here as the season goes on for the Colts. The Vikings got good news in their front office. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah has been re-upped as the GM there in Minnesota, and also gave an extension to the head coach, Kevin O'Connell. Geoff, this feels like symmetry, right? If the GM gets it right with a coach, and it's working out very well so far with that ownership to GM to head coach partnership, that's normally what's going to happen. GM gets re-upped, the head coach is going to get re-upped.
Yeah, he's done a good job of building up the team. And now their fates feel like it relies on the success of JJ McCarthy. And they put the resources in place. I feel like you have to feel, if you're a Viking fan, you probably feel like you've done what you had to do this offseason to make your team better, load up around McCarthy. And now, their jobs are sort of tied to the ability for McCarthy to get. Again, I think it was the right decision to get rid of Sam Darnold, especially at the salary that he wanted. If you want to take a more of a 1-year structure type deal, I think they would have done that. But Darnold, I think rightly, was like, nope, I'm taking a bigger deal. I deserve it. I played well. Now it's up to McCarthy to make it happen. So they've made the moves, I think, necessary to make that team better, especially what I like to refer to as like the spine of the team, right? The interior offensive line, defensive line. And we'll see how they do this year. I think it'll be a learning process early on, but tying those guys together makes a lot of sense. I've always been curious. I don't think I can't find this answer anywhere. What do general managers make? Like, it's a very time consuming job. I don't know what they make. I'm curious.
That's an interesting one because we don't think about that, right? We always talk about the coaches' salaries that are out there, player salaries, of course, but it is that GM. What do you have, Jack?
Well, I looked at it. Says here, I searched it on the machine here for. It says that there's a ZipRecruiter has salary ranges for NFL general managers. I don't think this is right. I'm sorry. I don't want to call a company out here, but I don't think that it says here like this might be just for general manager in like just general
in life,
I guess, because it says here ranging from 45,000 to 100,000 per year in the state of Utah. I don't know why Utah pulled up, but I don't think that a NFL general manager is making $100,000 a year.
I think Kwesi's doing a little bit better than that, certainly in Minnesota.
This is the downside of the AI stuff, right? Like sometimes I'll search, I'll use AI. I have this fun little AI tool I can use for some sports, and you put stuff in there, and I'm like, I know that's not right.
That's not right.
I just know that's not right, and that is not right. So good for him. Of course, he's earned that salary.
Yeah. No doubt. And again, you mentioned how we're turning the pages of June here. We're starting to get into those camp situations. Obviously, rookies have already shown up. You get those off-season workouts, those OTAs, get ready for training camp next month. 7 first-rounders have still not signed with their teams, Geoff. When does that become a concern? I've covered many a training camp back in the day in D.C. where guys waited too long. I'll infamously go back to Heath Schuler when he didn't start off very late in his rookie year and ultimately lost that job to Gus Frerotte way back in the day. But like, how important is it for these 7 first-round picks to sign and get with their teams?
Well, the time you're talking about is much different than the time now, right? Because back then, these salaries weren't slotted. right? So
That's
right now, basically, when you get drafted, this is what your salary is going to be. This is what it used to not be that way. You negotiated every single cent. And so players would hold out as leverage to make sure that they got every cent possible. And now it's more about language, right? Like how many offset years do we have, and how much is guaranteed, and what happens if someone's hurt, and all these little details that are minute that might matter to the agent getting a quote unquote win, but the money is the same. And most players used to sign. I 7th round pick signed like 2 days before training camp. That used to be the thing. You signed right before training camp. You signed, I think, a waiver basically saying like, if I got hurt in OTAs, I get this amount of money, and then you just show up and you practice. And I think now it's odd because there should not be holdouts, right? Because again, the language of these contracts is pretty much the same. You know what your money is going to be. You're fighting over little minute details, which again matter to the agent because they want to have a win, of course, right? They want to win.
Sure.
But I wouldn't worry much about it.
So again, if you're a veteran in that locker room and your first rounder isn't there at a time, you're not going to look at them differently in that locker room when they show up?
No, I think most players understand that it is a business, but I think that you want those guys in the locker room. Again, this is here a playbook, right? Here, right. Get the playbook, meet your teammates, work out with your teammates, create those bonds, create those fellowship moments, and not being there really hurts the ability to make those, connections as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's the thing that, again, I remember just from covering those locker rooms with these rookies that you just want them there. They're going to go through the process, whatever that process is. I don't want to use the word hazing. That's a negative connotation, but it is that kind of little brother, big brother mentorship, certainly by positions, whatever position those first rounders might be in, that you want to learn to know your teammates. And you wonder, the longer that goes on, do they get ostracized a little bit in those locker rooms there from that professional standpoint?
There's like one hazing out of 1,000 is like too far, and then we're not allowed to do it anymore. I'm not even saying hazing. It's just like it's a bond. People don't realize it's a bond. It's a shared experience to bond over. And I'm not talking about some of the really nasty things we've heard about hazing. Right. I'm not talking about those things, but there are things that happen in a locker room that are just normal hazing things that are just a shared thing to laugh about 5 years later. So those things I think should still be happening. Obviously, the nefarious things that are illegal that harm people should not happen. I think we can agree on those things.
Exactly. There's actually, right. It's just that the word has such a negative connotation, but yes, there's a real bonding process that and certainly the players in those locker rooms know as well. All right, Geoff, when we come back, let's start breaking down the NFC East on today's show. We'll start off with the big boys in the East. Who's in that top 2? We'll discuss next here on the GM Show.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz, and this part of the GM Shuffle is presented by Smirnoff. It is the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. I'm sure there are a lot of parties going on in Philadelphia after they won the Super Bowl a year ago, Geoff. Just an absolute demolition of Kansas City to win that Vince Lombardi trophy. As we break down the NFC East today, if we're going to break, we're going to break it down in tiers. And I do think, obviously, Philadelphia is at the top end of that tier. When you go 14-3, you win the Super Bowl a year ago, you re-sign Nick Sirianni, give him a contract extension. And we'll get to the second team, which might surprise people after this. But let's start with the Eagles right there, Geoff. You lose the coordinators, right? And a coordinator, and Kellen Moore. He's gone now. He's off to New Orleans as their head coach. You still have Vic Fangio to go there and run that defense. When you look ahead to this year, and we know how hard it is to repeat, and I think that's why the Chiefs going to 3 straight Super Bowls, years down the road from now, we'll look back at that and go, wow, how'd they ever do that? How hard or will it be hard for Philadelphia to get back to the rung they were on just about 6 months ago?
So when you win football games by physically dominating your opponent, I think you're in it every year in every game, right? Like and it's hard to look at. I'm trying to think of a Super Bowl champion recently that sort of just faked their way. It's hard to do that. I mean, I think there were some of the Chiefs teams that weren't great in the trenches, but they had Patrick Mahomes, and they just sort of had timely defense, especially 2019. The defense just played much better the last half of the season. But you certainly need those guys. You look at Tom Brady's teams that they've been good in the trenches, but again, the Philly team, look how good they are in the trenches. Their offensive line, best in the NFL. The defensive line, you can argue, right? Best or one of the best in the NFL. And that gives you a chance every game to win. Because what if, for example, one game Jalen Hurts doesn't have it? Well, let's run the football. Or the offense doesn't have it. Let's play some defense. Or defense has a bad day. Offense picks them up. We have different ways to win. You're in every game. And so I think you approach this season with that mindset of the Eagles are going to be competitive in every game. And they're probably going to be back close to an NFC Championship game again for that reason. Now, whether they have home field advantage, I don't know. Injuries happen. Maybe teams rise and fall in the NFC. But I also look around the NFC and I think to myself, who are the teams that I'm really concerned about beating Philly in a playoff game? And that's a low list. So I think Philly's kind of sort of right in the same spot they were last year, which is how they ended last season, which is top of the NFL. We can win with our style of football. And I do have a question about the offensive coordinator. Look, I think that changing coordinators every year, which it feels like they have, isn't great.
Every year.
It manifests itself in slow starts on offense. And it makes sense. Look, ask any NFL coordinator, play caller, both sides of the ball. And it takes 8 to 12 regular season weeks to feel comfortable with that team. And I think we saw that last year, specifically with Philly's defense. Once Fangio got comfortable with his personnel, they got much better. So that does worry me a little bit. But I think when you can beat people up, man, you have a chance each week to win. And it's a really repeatable thing when that's what you do.
You bring back Lane Johnson, 1-year contract there. You give Saquon Barkley 2-year extension. You do sign A.J. Dillon, who hadn't been seen in a couple of years here, to a 1-year deal as well. So you think that physicality with that running game pretty much stays intact there? And we know with Jalen Hurts, the tush push did not get banned, so they can still utilize that. And that's kind of a big deal for their offense, though, right?
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about why that is for people that might not understand. I think it's worth discussing. So it's a very successful play, obviously, right? A quarterback sneak in general was a highly successful. Tom Brady was over 70%, I think, on quarterback sneaks. It's a tough play to defend. And what it does is it allows your play calling to be different on 3rd and short, right? So if it's 3rd and 2, and you're going to go for it on a 4th down, it opens your whole playbook up. You don't have to run the menu of plays you would run on 3rd and 2. If you're a team that doesn't, if you're not a quarterback sneak team, which there are teams that don't do that, and you don't have a great quarterback, you're limited menu on 3rd and 2. You don't have much to do. Even on 3rd and 4, like what the Eagles do, I love. Okay, I'm going to tell you one thing I love the Eagles do. And the Lions do this as well. A 3rd and medium run. So 3rd and 3 to 7, basically. A lot of teams don't want to run the football, right? They want to pass the football. Well, you're going off for it on 4th down. Guess what you can afford to do? Run the football. And those are highly successful runs. Defense is shooting up the field, trying to rush the quarterback. They put in smaller defenders to stop the pass, right? And you're able to just lean on a team in those moments. You can do that if you know you're going to go for it on 3rd down. Actually, on 4th down. So it changes the way you play those plays. It puts stress on the opposing defense to defend different formations and plays on 3rd and short, on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and you get all these advantages. So that's why the Eagles can sort of be good in those moments, because they know on 4th down, they're going to sneak the ball.
And it's Cam Jurgens, by the way, they gave him a new deal as well. So that offensive line looks like it's going to be back intact. And again, we almost said the first thing, I'd never seen it before in the history of football. They were going to award the Eagles a touchdown if the Commanders went over the top one more time. I mean, I've never seen anything like that playoff game. That's how indefensible that place is.
It was wild. It was wild. And look, the NFL and all sports, typically have a way to correct itself. Let's put it like that, right? Yeah. And you have to think that there's a correction at some point. I don't know what it actually is. I mean, the Chiefs tried to have a defender line up basically cockeyed, like sideways, and that didn't work. And I said all along that obviously the attention for this play is on Jalen Hurts' legs, but the Eagles offensive line does such a great job. So look, I think their offense is going to be good. I think that it's fair to say that, Hurts extended to a different level last year especially in the Super Bowl, but they had won a lot of games in the playoffs without him having to be great. But he's really not a stat compiler quarterback, right? He might, I have it down here. His rushing number is 605.5. 600.5. And his rushing, his passing numbers typically aren't as high as other quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, he's just not going to be this guy, but he's so efficient in what they ask him to do. It makes him really tough to defend.
11.5 is that win total for the Eagles, the highest, obviously, in the NFC East. I mentioned that we're going to tier this thing in this segment, the next segment. The other team in that upper echelon is not the Dallas Cowboys. It's the Washington Commanders by win total. They are next at 9.5 is the Commanders' win total. And by the way, that's juiced to the over for you gamblers out there, minus $1.25, plus money in the under, 9.5 wins. I always say this, Geoff, and I mean this with affection for Dan Quinn. He's got a lifespan of about 3-4 really good years where he is. We saw it with the Legion of Boom when he was running that defense back in Seattle to championships. We saw it in the ATL as head coach. They're, a catastrophe away from winning the Super Bowl there against the Patriots. And even as D coordinator with the Cowboys, it was a good 3-year window, and then it kind of ran its course. Year number 2 from Dan Quinn. I think people are expecting even better things, which is going to be hard to do because they won 12 games a year ago.
I think people look at the Commanders' success last year and might not realize they won 14 games. It wasn't a fluke. So I think people look at them and say, "Oh, they were a 9-win team. They sort of got lucky. Let's bet they're over this year." Legitimately, a 12-win team in the regular season. Then 2 playoff games and they got blown out. That is what it is. They're a young team. It happens. But they also blew out the Lions the game before. The Lions, just did some dumb things offensively. Also had no defensive players left. So that made sense when you look back on that game. But I think what you are most excited about if you're a Commanders fan is Jaden Daniels, right? Is year 2, it should be better. You should see more success from Jaden Daniels, who had the best rookie quarterback season of all time. They don't have a first place schedule, as we know. They have a second place schedule. I would expect them to be just as good this season. Now, 12 wins. Am I betting the over? I don't know if I feel comfortable. I rarely will take overs in NFL win totals, especially to win 10 games. That's just hard to win 10 games. The schedule is very manageable. The road games are not at Atlanta, at the Chargers, at the Cowboys, we know, in division, the Dolphins in Spain. Like, that's not a tough road schedule. Division's hard, right? Cowboys always will give someone a run. The Giants aren't very good, but the Giants play the Commanders well over the years. But I think you have to feel good about the roster, the improvements you made this offseason, how last year finished, Jaden Daniels in year 2. And one thing I want to give credit to, I have been a critic of offense coordinator of Kingsbury over the years. And he has done the same thing every year until last season, which is his teams start fast and get worse throughout the season. Didn't happen last year.
Right.
He almost got better, which I give him credit for figuring something out. This is probably his last year's OC there before he becomes a head coach again. So I think you got to squeeze everything out of this offense you can this season. I think they're going to be good again. Again, they're going to win 11 games, 10. I don't know, man, but the manageable schedule, and you have a superstar quarterback. I think if you were drafting quarterbacks today, where would he go? 5th? I mean, 4th? I think people still draft Mahomes, Allen. I think it would be Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, probably, even though Lamar's going to be 30 fairly soon.
But you could put him right in that 5 spot. Yeah.
I
think you're talking about him.
When you have a quarterback, so best quarterback in the NFC is what we just said, essentially. Which I don't think that's not hyperbole, right? I mean, who's is Hurts better? I don't think Hurts might be more complete as a player now, but I think better than Goff and Love and Williams, Baker. Let's go through the list right now. I mean, is he better than Stafford? Yeah, I think.
I mean, again, and you're taking age into account when we talk about this, people. So if you're watching, don't go, oh my God, you can't, like Matthew Stafford. Yes, Matthew Stafford at the tail end of his career. If it was Matthew Stafford 10 years ago, it's a different conversation.
Correct.
But where he is going into year 2, I mean, I'm old enough to remember Dan Marino going into year 2, and they went to a Super Bowl after a great rookie year for Dan Marino. So I'm not saying that's where Jaden Daniels is, but you can feel it in DC. They're expecting great things from their young signal caller in year number 2. They get Laramie Tunsil, they get Deebo Samuel, they re-sign Zach Ertz. They got a lot of help too for Jaden Daniels up front. So everything does look good from an offensive standpoint. I'll be curious about the defense to see what Dan Quinn can do with that defense. Bobby Wagner and the like, they get a little bit older there if they can hold up. Right. But Geoff, when we come back, let's get to the bottom half of the NFC East and a team that I can't believe we have to put into that mix. That's next here on the GM Show.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here on a Monday. And Geoff, we talked about the hierarchy in the NFC East. Eagles, Commanders.
Yes.
We have to begin this segment with the Cowboys in the lower half of this division. Geoff, what world are we living in 2025? But by order of the win total, it would be accurate. Dallas right now sitting at 7.5. And when this number came out, Geoff, it was about minus $1.10. For the bettors out there, this is ballooned to minus $1.60. So at least the Cowboys in the marketplace are taking a lot of money to push this juice up to minus $1.60 if you want to wager the over 7.5. Look, new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer coming in here, first-time head coach. Obviously, Mike McCarthy's been shown the door here. That could be the biggest difference overall. Dak Prescott back and healthy. We got to change at running back here for the Cowboys. You also draft a running back early on in this draft. So a revamped backfield, offensive line has gotten younger. That's where they went in the first round here. What do you make of the new look Cowboys here before we begin play in 2025?
I have a hard time with this team. I'm gonna need your Cowboys fandom to help me with this one, because I don't know what to do with them. Like, I think it's very fair to say that they should win 8 or 9 or 10 games, right?
Yes.
Last year was a injury-filled season that just didn't go very well for them. And you look at their schedule this year and just their overall team, and when I look at teams, I like to find what I call sort of the game wreckers, right? Those playmakers. They have them, like Dak Prescott, who, again, we can argue where he is in the pantheon of NFL quarterbacks right now, but he's not terrible. He's probably above average. Like that's a game wrecker per se. Plenty of offensive linemen are fantastic. Got all pros there, right? They draft well there. CeeDee Lamb, game wrecker, right? You got Pickens in there. You go to the defense, Micah Parsons, some guys on the back end of that secondary. Like, they have dudes in place to be a much better team this season. But the hard part for me is I just don't know if Schottenheimer is a good coach. And I understand, and look, I see all the tweets and the reports. Oh, he gave the guys milkshakes and they went paintballing. I like those things. Those are good. Like, team camaraderie is, again, I've talked about the whole show, is a good thing. But it does feel like they're trying to really force this on us. So like like Schottenheimer is just players coach. And
right.
I don't know, man. Bill Belichick didn't do those things. Andy Reid didn't do those things. Tom doesn't do those things. I don't know if that means you're a good or bad coach, but it does feel like they're forcing us that. I think at minus 160, I'm not touching the over. I'm not betting the under either. So to me, it's about Dak coming back healthy and how good is Schottenheimer as a coach. The schedule is very manageable.
Yes.
Besides week 1, right? You're at Philly. You're probably gonna lose that game on Thursday night. It's New York, Chicago, the Jets, the Panthers, Cardinals, Raiders. The middle of the season, the middle end looks a little tougher. Philly, KC, Detroit, Minnesota in a 4-game stretch. And you end again with the Chargers and the Commanders and the Giants. Like, it's a manageable schedule. Going over would not surprise me. I do think that's a heavy juice to lay on that number, though.
I agree. And your bigger point about Brian Schottenheimer is interesting because I covered his dad, Marty, in D.C. He was only there for a year. And I gained so much respect for the way he managed that team that year. For those who remember, they went 8-8 with Tony Banks at quarterback. Trunk Kennedy was a running back, but they didn't have a whole lot of talent in D.C. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that the apple falls far from the tree. You're hoping, if you're a Cowboy backer, that he is 3/4 of what his dad was as a head coach, which is really hard to do because, as you know, Marty was a really good head coach in this league for a lot of years with a lot of different teams. But he was on the staff. I think people are forgetting that. It's not that they're bringing in Brian Schottenheimer. He's got camaraderie already with Dak. He's being elevated, right? We're really being elevated now to go all the way to head coach. So how does that work, Geoff? That if you and I are boys, because I'm your positional coach, and now I've got to be your boss, if you will, in a sense. Does that change that dynamic between Dak and Brian?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's one thing I was concerned about, hearing the reports of like, he's a player's coach and we elevate the player's coach. So, and that now you go from having to be a friend to basically a boss, right? Like the relationship changes, and how are players going to take it out? The players are professionals and adults will probably be fine with it, but can you go from the fun-loving coach to being the disciplinarian? Now, his style might not be as a head coach to be disciplinary. There's other people with staff. You might entrust that to the defensive coach or an offensive assistant to be the red ass coach, right? Like you need some of that in your team, I feel like. So it's a curious, right? It's curious because like, what if things go poorly and you're the player's coach? Are you gonna really be able to crack the whip down on these guys and make sure that they follow you and whatnot? So starting fast would be super important. You're a Cowboys fan. How do you feel about the team this year?
I like them. I did like the over before that juice, as you mentioned, gets out of hand from a betting perspective. I don't like laying $1.60 on any seasonal prop like that. I do expect this team to win at least 8 games. I think their ceiling is really high. I do, because if everything breaks right and you get the rookie now out of Oklahoma, and it sounds like he's got a really bad disposition, which is what I like out of offensive linemen, as you well know, Geoff. That's what I want. And they do have pieces in play. They have drafted well with the offensive line, but you better be able to protect Dak, because the one thing that we don't talk about enough is there's been numerous seasons he has not finished the year as the quarterback or gotten hurt at the beginning of the year. He's not been a guy that we look at now and go, that's a 17-week quarterback. So the backup quarterbacks have come into play a lot in the last couple of years, right? And Cooper Rush isn't walking through that door. They let him go. Now Joe Milton's going to be the backup. So if you want to hit those win totals, you better hope first and foremost that you protect Dak Prescott up front. I love the Pickens signing. We all know about CeeDee Lamb. I don't think anybody questions that. I'm okay with the running back situation here. Figure out what Javonte Williams looks like. Let's figure out what Blue looks like as the rookie running back. I'm okay with all that. It's all going to start up front for this team, Geoff. And if they protect number 4, then this team could be a 10-11 win football team.
Yeah. Yeah, Dak is interesting because you get to a certain point, I think, in your career when you try not to get hurt. I just don't know if that is a way you want to play the game. If he is less willing to run and scramble, does that change the way he plays offense? Does it change the way you play offense? That I think is I think the fair way to look at it. I'm curious to see how that looks, but it feels like they're going to go back to what worked best with Dak, which was run the football, play action pass, protect him, right? I mean, that was the formula early in his career with the best offensive line in football. And that formula to me sometimes makes you a little limited in what you can be as an offense, but it's not a bad formula. It's a formula that you can win a lot of games with, but it's those special moments when you do things that certain way, and then you're asking for a little bit more in some circumstances. Can you get that more in those moments when you have an offense structure like that? But it's an offense that can get you through the regular season, certainly. So I think the Cowboys, again, I'm not betting the under. It wouldn't surprise me if they won 9 games, because the talent, again, those game records, man, are there. Like, those guys make a difference, and there are a lot more Cowboys, that are on that list than other teams.
I think a team you might be looking to fade could be the Giants. And this has nothing to do really. I think the roster has been upgraded in this last year in the offseason. We'll figure out if the GM, but the head coach, if this is their last years there in New York, if things don't go well. That win total sitting at 5.5. You mentioned like Dak, if he's starting to look for ways to get out of bounds or not take the big shots. I don't see that in Russell Wilson. When I watched him last year in Pittsburgh, looks like he's going to be the starter this year in New York. I just wonder if I see a guy that's trusting his arm almost too much and makes unnecessary throws where if he just manages the game, they'll be better off.
Yeah. Well, look, they're going to be better off having just a competent NFL quarterback in there, right? Guys play a lot of football, which was Russell. You can design an offense around him. I think it's a limited offense. It's throw the ball deep. on go routes. It's you roll him to his right a little bit and get him in space, and he can make some plays. It's not really drop back offense, and I think we saw last season as teams figured this out over the season. Pittsburgh's offense just got worse. The Giants are in a really interesting spot because they qualify for all the metrics, my mental metrics of a team that's going to be better this season than last year, go over the win total, right? So let's talk about it. They improved at quarterback. Look, whatever you think about Wilson, you do, but he's better than what they had, okay?
Yes.
They're going to be much healthier this season, right? Typically, you have an injured year, and the next year you're a little bit healthier. So like that returns the offensive line to be healthier. There's players on the offensive line that can be really good, football players. Like Neighbors in the year two, like you got stud on the outside. Defensively, it was a good defense last season. You're going to get better now with some of the additions you made. All like check marks, right? Like boom, 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 all these great things. But then the problem is the schedule. Ooh. And last year they were 1-8 in one score games. That's another metric, right? Where you check the box. You go next season. I'm not saying they're 8-1, but
right.
They're 4-4. They're 4-5 or 5-4. But are they going to play 9 close games this season? So just like here's the schedule, guys. They're at the Commanders, at the Cowboys, Chiefs, Chargers, at New Orleans week 5. Maybe a 1-point favorite, depending on their situation at quarterback in New Orleans. Maybe, right? Eagles, at Denver, at Philly, San Francisco. The first 9 games. Then you're at Chicago, week 10, who may or may at that point might be hitting a stride with Ben Johnson. Host Green Bay. Go to Detroit. At New England. Monday Night Football. Sorry, everyone, but probably best case, again, you're a point or two favorite if New England's really bad. If not, they're going to be a favorite. Washington, Minnesota, at Vegas. And then Dallas. So there's like maybe 1.5 games you're a favorite in start the season. That's not good. It's not. So I think we could say 2 things are true, right? Like I think the Giants are much improved roster-wise, but their schedule was so difficult, it might not show in the field. And then I think that equals Jackson Dart playing much sooner. I think Dart plays sooner than we think, especially if they start out the season, 0-4, go to New Orleans. I could see Dart getting there by week 5.
I see a similar scenario because you do draft him in the first round here with the Giants with Jackson Dart. And I 1,000% agree with that assessment. This is going to be a better football team that might not show up in the standings. So it seems counterintuitive, but I think that's where it gets you to an under, even though there'll be a difficult out. It's just going to be hard for them to win a lot of those games, how brutal that schedule is. When we come back, Geoff, I do want to get to some divisional prices and see if we can find any maybe exactas that we like out there in the betting market. That's next year as we continue our breakdown of the NFC East on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here on this Monday, breaking down the NFC East. By the way, we're going to do this for every single division as we lead up here this summer and getting us ready for real football here. So we're going to break down your favorite team, whatever team that is out there listening. We appreciate you listening here to the GM Shuffle. Look, we understand why the Eagles are odds-on favorites to win this division. But here's the caution in that. The Eagles are minus $1.35. Geoff, it's one of the most bizarre stats in sports. Forget about football.
Oh, yeah.
There has not been a repeat champion in the NFC East for over 2 decades. Yeah, now,
2004.
Whether we think that's superstition, whether that's just some sort of sporting this is an anomaly. It's not going to happen again. We can't bet on that. For whatever reason, Geoff, no repeat champion since Donovan McNabb and the Eagles did it back in the mid-2000s. Are we going to break that curse? And do you want to lay $1.35 to say, yeah, the Eagles will win this division again?
What's wild, there's been 4 Super Bowl champions during that time, too. 4 Super Bowl champions, right? Giants have won twice. Eagles have won twice now. Really, 3, obviously. We don't know what happened this season. There's been not been a repeat champion, which is kind of wild. Now, the Giants won one year, I think it was a wild card team, so that doesn't really count maybe to that argument. that should not change how you wager on this season. Every NFL season is its own season. I want to make that very clear, guys. I think the NFL is a sport where people get it wrong is maybe the wrong way to say it, Dave, but they often refer back to last season. Listen, last season, this is what happened. Unimportant. Does not matter. The NFL is a new season every year. Now, you can look back at player performance and project into a new season, absolutely. But you can't just say, well, this happened last year, it's going to happen again. No. It's not the NFL. The NFL is a year-to-year league. So it's a great trend. You can lean on it a little bit. I think what does Wes Reynolds say? Make a trend your friend.
You don't get married.
Like that. Yeah. So it's okay to I love that line. I always butcher it too. At least I give him credit for butchering his own line. But it's a good line, right? And so I like that. Again, the trend makes no sense. There's no logical explanation for it. So again, I minus 135. I don't know if I would do that, but there are ways to bet on divisions, whether it's exact result, right? Just choosing the team to finish 1 or 2. And guys, the numbers get posted every week for these divisions. So Eagles lose 1 or 2 games, Cowboys win a couple games, Commanders win a couple games, you get a better number. And you might say 135 is too rich for my blood now. You might get 100 somewhere, or 105, or even a plus 150 at some point. Or you just miss out on it. The Eagles start 6-0, and you're just like, oh, well, I missed out on taking that. I don't like the number. So certainly a way to look at it. You could play Eagles to be the number 1 seed at plus 330. There's ways to play this without having to lay money on the Eagles if you don't want to lay minus 130.
So the Commanders are going to be a popular betting choice as the second betting choice to win this division at plus 205. The Cowboys, by the way, right now are the third betting choice, distant at 6-1. Look at that demarcation line from 205 to 6-1. And then another huge jump to the Giants at 25-1, which seems crazy in a 4-team division. Long gone are the days of 5 teams in these divisions. So it's just 4. I don't want to jump at the long number, obviously 25-1, but those exactas, as you mentioned, if you don't want to play the Eagles at $1.35, but as we did in our show today, if you think there's a clear demarcation between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, you can bet Philly to finish first, Washington to finish second, and that 1-2 exacta, like in horse racing, would pay $1.60. If you think Washington wins the division, keeps that bizarre streak going for 21 years and on, and Philadelphia comes in second, that's plus 260. Obviously, you can play that box, if you will, and you get plus money as long as it's Philly and Washington 1 and 2. Is there any case to be made for the Giants as an extreme long shot, or Dallas at 6-1?
No. Well, Dallas, you could make the case. It'd have to involve injuries, I think, for other teams. But it's only a case that you can make that case. You said it was only plus 190 for the exacta?
For Philly, Washington, plus $1.60 to finish 1 and 2.
Yeah, okay. 1 and 2. If you're doing 190 is not enough for me to make that case. I think you can make the case if you want to do the exacta. I think I would do Eagles Cowboys, which isn't even available.
5-1. Eagles 1.
I'm looking right now. Maybe look at the wrong book. Yeah. That feels like some value there. It's a tough case to make, but like Commanders have a Texans thing, right? Where like they're just not as good in year 2 with Jane Daniels and slip back a little bit. Again, if I knew Schottenheimer was going to be a better coach than I think he's going to be, the Cowboys are certainly live to not only finish second, but to win the division. Like it's, again, over the roster, it's not a bad team. The pieces are in place to be. I see you grinning ear to ear with the Cowboys fan. I mean, this comes on better for you right now. Like it's not like most third place teams when you're like, this has to happen. Like it's a manageable path, easier schedule, things like that. You win a couple games, you get an upset in Washington in a game, like certainly manageable. So I would look at that, I think, more than anything else.
When we talk about this a lot on VSiN, I know you and I both do, that if you're laying prices, like we mentioned, $1.35 in Philadelphia win the division, more things have to go right than they do have to go wrong for those tickets not to catch. Just go back a year ago to the AFC East, right? The Bills were 2-1. You get the at plus $2 because everybody was betting the Jets, right? The Dolphins were the cats meow a year ago this time. And you could have got Buffalo Bills to win their division last year plus $2. That seems insane now, right? But that's because narratives that get out there on what these other teams are going to look like. I just worry that because it is a new offensive coordinator in Philadelphia for another year, and they have struggled. We'll find out Sirianni if he can piece this together better than they did after losing to the Chiefs the first time around than this time around. I don't know that I want to lay numbers here in this division. Yeah. The Commanders at 205, I think will be a chic pick to upset the Eagles and win this division. But as you and I alluded to a little bit, does the defense of the Commanders worry you? Because it doesn't worry me with Philadelphia.
No, it doesn't worry me with Philly. Buffalo, we'll get to AFC East at some point. Minus 260 to win the division.
Right.
I don't think it's even. I don't think that's a bad wager if you have the funds to tie up on that.
That's almost a $5 adjustment, Jeff, from a year ago. That's crazy.
I know, but think about if you have the funds to tie up into that.
Right.
There's so many ways to play that off at some point. There's just so many ways to just be like, oopsie, I made a mistake. I'll play the other AFC East teams. But outside of Josh Allen getting hurt, how's Buffalo not winning that division?
Right.
But that's an insane number when you consider the Chiefs who won the division 12 years in a row feels like are minus 120. That's crazy. The Chiefs are minus 120 and the Eagles are minus 135. Wow. Well, and that's are minus one. The Chiefs feel cheap minus 120.
And the thing is, as you well know, again, kind of one of these streaks we're talking about with the NFC East, the Chiefs, as long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid have been the quarterback head coach, they've won the division every year, which is insane. So I'm looking at the Eagles at $1.35. I'm not going to lay it because I do think that Dallas and the Commanders could push them. But I think you and I both look at that and go, don't fall for the 25-1 of the Giants, right? There's not value there.
No, there's no value there. There's none. One of my best bets for this division, I got two of them, is the Giants under 5.5. I hate doing it. I really do, because I just think that they meet all the things that I look at for a team to go over. In fact, the Giants, when the win totals first came out, the Giants over 5.5 was one of my favorites. Just looking at it without looking at schedules first, just seeing 5.5, 1-8 and one score games, the team is better. But you look at the schedule and just where are 6 wins? Where are 6 wins in the schedule? And this is the trendiest win total. I get it. It's minus 155, minus 150 some places. But I just don't see a path with that schedule to where they're winning 6 of those 17 games.
Well, and next week, you and I are going to go from the East to the West. We're going to break down the NFC West next week. And I think anytime you break down a division, or these odds that we've just given you here for the NFC East, you do have to go right to divisional play first, because the first tiebreaker after head-to-head is going to be your record in that division, right? So if the Giants, if you want to take a stab at 25-1, well, they have to go minimum 3-3 in the division, right? To even have it, right? To be live in that conversation. For any team to win any division, you can't be below 500 in your own division, or else you're not going to win that division. Right. So you got to start right there as your first demarcation line of, is this team good enough to win at least half the games in the division? And I don't think we see a pathway for the Giants.
It's not up. I'm trying to find it. I don't think it's up yet, but you can bet on division wins. I'm trying to find it. I don't see it yet. But it's going to be 2.5. I feel comfortable that 2.5 is typically what the lowest number is for division wins. I would be fine taking the under 2.5. I'm sure it's going to be a juiced number. I can't find it. And maybe they're not up yet. I feel like it would be up. I'm just searching sports books right now.
They would
under 2.5 is,
I haven't seen them yet, but that's normally the total that you're going to get for the bottom feeders, right, in those divisions.
Yeah.
It's going to be about 2.5. Very quickly, to wrap this up with the Giants, if things do go south, but they show improvement, do you think the Mara family stays with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll?
Joe Schoen, maybe. Brian Daboll, no. Giants, by the way, plus 600, worst record in the NFL. Or fewest wins, I should say. Fewest wins, but plus 600. No, I mean, Brian Daboll will be gone. Joe Schoen might survive if Jackson Dart is good. That's my take on that.
That's why he keeps his job.
The other wager I like quickly, because we don't have much time here. CeeDee Lamb over 1,200.5 receiving yards this year. The last 2 years, well, previous to last year, he was over this easily. Last year, obviously, injuries, weird year at quarterback, weird year in offense. I think he bounces back. I know they have another option there in Pickens, but I think it actually pulls defenders away from him. I think Lamb has a good year with a healthy Dak Prescott.
Yeah, if you don't have the injury to Dak and he doesn't have the injury to his shoulder, he would have done that 3 years in a row. That's for sure. I like that play as well. Geoff, great stuff as always, my friend. We'll break it down each and every week here, and next week you and I will break down the NFC West. So for Geoff Schwartz, I'm Dave Ross. Thanks for watching and listening to the GM Shuffle presented by DraftKings Sportsbook.